Hurry, before I lose control. He stepped closer and the ground trembled. The wind howled across the jagged cliffs of Ardent Vale, carrying with it a scent of ozone and danger. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest, each beat echoing against the cavernous canyon walls. She clutched the ancient crystalline orb in her hands, its pulsing light faint against the gathering storm. Somewhere in the distance, a low rumble shook the ground, sending dust and loose stones skittering across the uneven terrain. "Lira, hurry!" a voice whispered urgently from the shadows. She glanced over her shoulder, her eyes catching a glimpse of him, Kaden. His dark cloak whipped violently in the wind, and his amber eyes burned with intensity. He took a cautious step toward her, but even from that distance, she could see the tension in his body. I can't control it much longer," he called, his voice strained. A deep tremor passed beneath their feet, and she stumbled, nearly dropping the orb. Her fingers tightened around it, feeling the energy thrumming through her palms, alive and almost unbearable. "Every second I hesitate, it grows stronger," Kaden shouted, the wind carrying his words like warning bells. Lyra's breaths came in sharp gasps. She had trained for years under the elders of the Vale, learning to manipulate the energy of the crystalline orbs, but nothing had prepared her for this. This wasn't practice, it was survival. She knew that if the orb's energy was unleashed uncontrollably, it could level the entire canyon. "I can handle it," she yelled back, though uncertainty laced her tone. She swallowed hard and took a step toward him, her boots scraping against the jagged rocks. The orb's glow brightened, reacting to her fear and doubt, its light now streaked with white-hot veins. Kaden's brow furrowed. "No. You need to step closer to me," he shouted, moving through the uneven terrain as if the ground itself had become a living, breathing thing beneath his feet. Another tremor rumbled through the earth, stronger this time, sending loose boulders crashing down the cliffside. Lira stumbled again but steadied herself, gripping the orb with every ounce of strength she possessed. The distance between them closed, but each step Kaden took seemed to shake the world. Trees bent under the invisible force of energy radiating from him, and the ground cracked with angry, jagged lines. The air around them shimmered, charged with raw power, and Lira could feel her hair lifting, her heart racing as though the universe itself were holding its breath. "Now, Lira!" Kaden yelled. He was almost upon her, his hand reaching out, trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the effort of containing the destructive energy coursing through him. "Before I lose control." She nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. The elder's teachings flooded her mind. Energy flows where intention guides it. Step into the center of his focus, synchronize your will with his, or perish. She lifted the orb higher, letting its pulse synchronize with the rhythm of his energy, feeling the tremor's pulse in tandem with her heartbeat. Kaden's hand found hers, their fingers brushing against the glowing surface of the orb. Electricity arced between them, white-hot sparks dancing over their skin without burning. The ground trembled violently, fissures splitting the canyon floor, and rocks the size of carts were thrown like pebbles. Yet, in that chaos, something remarkable happened. A thread of control wove itself through Lyra's consciousness, binding to Kaden's frantic energy. "Focus on me, feel it," he gritted through clenched teeth, his amber eyes locking with hers. "Channel it now." Her breath hitched, panic threatening to overwhelm her, but she forced herself to breathe steadily, feeling the tremors as if they were part of her own body. Slowly, painfully, the chaotic energy around them began to respond. The violent shaking of the canyon slowed to a rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. The jagged rocks that threatened to tumble froze in midair, suspended by sheer force of their combined focus. Good, that's it, Kaden muttered, though a strained edge lingered in his voice. Keep it steady. Don't let it surge. Sweat ran down her face, and her arms shook from the effort, but she mirrored his concentration perfectly, letting the orb's energy flow through her and into him, stabilizing the storm that threatened to tear everything apart. She felt the power in her veins like a living thing, wild, untamed, but under their combined control it began to bend, to fold neatly into itself, restrained yet potent. Suddenly, a massive tremor rocked the canyon one last time, louder and more violent than any before. Lira gasped, thinking they had failed, when Kaden's grip on her hand tightened, and his voice rang clear. Together, Lira. One breath, one will. The orb flared blindingly for a moment. Then, as though exhaling a sigh of relief, its energy collapsed inward, leaving the surrounding canyon eerily silent. Dust fell from the cliffs, settling in the sudden calm, and the wind died down to a whisper. The ground beneath them no longer quaked, but small fissures lined the stone like scars, reminders of what had almost been lost. Lira sank to her knees, exhausted, the orb's glow now soft and steady in her hands. Kaden knelt beside her, his chest heaving, sweat dripping from his forehead. They both stared at the fissures in silence for a long moment, processing the enormity of what they had survived. You did it, he breathed finally, a mix of awe and relief in his voice. We did it. She nodded, too drained for words. Finally, she allowed herself a shaky laugh, the tension easing from her shoulders. I thought we were done for, she admitted. Kaden's hand brushed a strand of hair from her face, a small smile breaking through the exhaustion. Not when we face it together, he said simply. The warmth in his eyes contrasted sharply with the raw, destructive power they had just contained. The wind picked up again, but this time it was gentle, caressing the canyon with a soft sigh. Lira rose slowly, the orb's glow casting a serene light over the jagged cliffs. Beside her, Kaden stepped closer once more, but this time there was no tremor beneath his feet, only the quiet promise of strength held in unity. They stood there, side by side, surveying the aftermath. The world had nearly fallen apart, but together they had bent it back into shape. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in bruised purples and golds, Lira knew one thing with absolute certainty. They were unstoppable when they trusted each other. The final tremor subsided, leaving an eerie, trembling silence in the canyon. Lira's knees buckled, and she sank to the ground, the orb in her hands now glowing softly, almost peacefully. Kaden knelt beside her, his chest heaving, sweat streaking his face. We did it, he said, his voice still thick with disbelief and exhaustion. Lira managed a shaky laugh, the tension finally draining from her shoulders. I thought it was over for us, she admitted, still staring at the fissures etched into the canyon floor, scars from the chaos they had contained. Kaden's hand brushed a stray lock of hair from her face, amber eyes softening. Not when we face it together, he said quietly. The power that had once threatened to rip everything apart now seemed almost harmless in the glow of their shared relief.